Cue and Review, celebrating 40 years of audio production, welcomes you to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports Podcast, recorded from our studio in the Bishopbriggs Media Centre and by our volunteers working from home. Keep up to date with Cue and Review news via our Facebook, Twitter or Instagram, at Cue and Review, that's @CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch with us directly by emailing information@cueandreview.com. That's INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. Please like and share our podcast and give us constructive feedback.
Evening Times Sport, July 11. Celtic are on bucket list of clubs. Report by Times Sport. Ange Postecoglou described Celtic as a bucket list club for managers as he tipped continuing success under his replacement Brendan Rodgers. The new Tottenham boss stunned Hoops supporters when he left for London at the end of last season, days after clinching the domestic treble in Scotland with a Scottish Cup final win over Inverness. Postecoglou, who won 5 out of 6 trophies in his 2 seasons in the Celtic hot seat, was succeeded by Brendan Rodgers, who has returned for a second spell in charge of the Singe Premiership Championship. Speaking at his first Tottenham media conference, the former Australia manager was asked if leaving Glasgow was a difficult decision. He said, "Yes, it was a tough decision. It's a special football club. If you have a bucket list as manager of football clubs you want to manage, that is probably one of them. The supporters are not really supporters. The club is an extension of them. It's a family. We had a brilliant 2 years, great group of players, great staff. We had some fantastic success and great moments within that. I will cherish them, but I am the kind of guy who loves a challenge. I love a build, I love a rebuild. That is where I feel I am at my best. This challenge, when it came along, had all the elements I need to get going again. I know Celtic have appointed Brendan Rodgers, who is an outstanding manager, and they will continue to have success. They have great players, great infrastructure. It is a great football club. I was very fortunate to be allowed that responsibility for a couple of years. Now my goal is to try and make some special moments here and create something special for this great football club as well. Evening Times Sport, July 11. Hearts to cut away ticket allocations at Tynecastle. Report by Ewan Payton. Hearts are set to cut all away allocations at Tynecastle to around just 650 tickets. Hibs will be the only exception to the rule, as the Gorgie side makes the move prioritise their own supporters over larger travelling fans. The Daily Record states that Hearts are cutting the number of away supporters due to the sheer volume of season ticket sales. It is also believed there is a huge walk-up demand for tickets. So this means that 10 out of their 11 Premiership rivals will face a scramble for tickets when they visit the maroon end of the capital. One section of the Roseburn stand will be afforded to visiting supporters, which is significantly less than previous numbers given out to opposing teams. It is said that a gentleman's agreement is in place with Hibs, which will mean they are not part of the ticket cull. The Easter Road Club will continue to get all 3,600 seats behind the goal, In return, Hearts will have the same in Leith. At the end of last season, Aberdeen were handed just 650 tickets for their visit in the post-split fixtures. The Dons had requested additional tickets, but this was rejected. Of course, Celtic and Rangers will now have much fewer fans at Tynecastle than was previously the case. Both clubs used to fill the entire Roseburn end, but in recent years this was reduced to just two sections, which made up just over 1,000 seats. Now fans of either of the Glasgow Giants will face an even greater challenge to see their club in action in Edinburgh. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, July 11. And Nick Rogers says, "What are the chances of a home winner at Scottish Open?" Those Just Stop Oil activists are everywhere, aren't they? In fact, I was convinced they were going to burst onto the scene and disrupt me with that orange powder, jigsaw pieces and confetti as I started writing the Tuesday column. The lurking presence I could detect, however, was just the sports editor peering over my shoulder at these opening few sentences and muttering, "For Pete's sake, just stop, please, just stop," before gluing his hand to my laptop in protest. I'm sure plenty of you would support his admirable cause. To be fair, though, I cannot imagine those eco-warriors would have many issues with your correspondent. I am, after all, very aware of my environmental duties and responsibilities, hence why I recycle the same old codswallop on this back page every week. Anyway, the Genesis Scottish Open gets cracking this Thursday, so presumably that Just Stop Oil lot will be sneaking about the Renaissance Club, with the relevant lanyards, of course, and plotting some kind of audacious action as Rory McIlroy eyes up a tricky 8-footer on the 9th. Given that the DP World Tour, along with the PGA Tour, has forged an unlikely alliance with the Saudi Public Investment Fund, you'd think one of the European circuit marquee events would be ripe for a bit of direct action and civil resistance. Over in the United States, meanwhile, representatives from the PGA Tour will stand before a Senate committee in Washington today and will get grilled about the Saudi deal, which has left the golf world reeling like Norman Wisdom getting stuck in the revolving door of a hotel lobby. There will no doubt be a few twists, turns, bumps and birrells to come before the details of this complex, confusing and contentious arrangement are made clear. As for this week's golfing offering on Scottish soil, well, 8 of the world's top 10 have descended on East Lothian for a shimmering showpiece that's worth a mighty $9 million. McIlroy is back. Scotty Scheffler, the world number 1, is there. So too are the likes of Matt Fitzpatrick, Jordan Spieth, defending champion Xander Schauffele, and an energised Ricky Fowler. The championship's spot in the schedule, meanwhile, just a week before the Open, is so coveted it's almost protected by the National Trust for Scotland. Heady times indeed. It's a bit different to the early days of the Scottish Open back in 1972, when it was part of the first official European Tour season. The event was played at Downfield in Dundee. Sunbeam Electric, the American household appliance company that produced a natty array of food mixers, toasters and waffle irons, were the title sponsor, and the great Neil Coles, once likened to an amiable archdeacon, won the first prize of £2,000. Nowadays that probably wouldn't buy you a pumice stone in the plush Renaissance lodges. Just over a decade ago, there were genuine fears for the Scottish Open's future when long-standing sponsor Barclays ended its relationship with the event. The intervention of Alex Salmond's government and significant backing from Aberdeen Asset Management essentially saved it. Here in 2023, it continues to go from strength to strength. In a global field of formidable force, what are the chances of a home winner? There's not been one since good old Monty won what was known as the Standard Life Loch Lomond event back in 1999. Given the might of the line-up, this week's cut and thrust will be a considerable step up in standard for the DP World Tour regulars, but in their own backyard, the Scots contingent can be quietly confident. Richie Ramsay or Robert McIntyre could, perhaps should, have won the Made in Himmerland event in Denmark on Sunday, but for ruinous late lapses. Nobody, though, ever said winning was easy in this fickle game of fine margins and wildly fluctuating fortunes. With a raft of strong, competitive 20-somethings, as well as a sturdy stalwart like 40-year-old Ramsay, Scotland at least has a decent crop on the circuit just now. Jocks on tour are doing quite well, noted Ramsay last week. I've said it for the last few months, that we always seem to have one saltire on the top of the leaderboard. We've got a lot of good young players who are capable of winning tournaments. Getting over that winning line is easier said than done, of course, but they continue to chap on the door. It wasn't that long ago that us crotchety Scottish golf writers were bemoaning the fact that the home of the game did not have a main tour player under the age of 30. Looking back on that fairly fallow period, I'm reminded of the sage words of my late colleague Dougie Lowe, the much-missed former golf correspondent of the Herald, as he quietly raked over the debris of another futile weekend covering the humdrum endeavours of the Scots at a tournament a few years ago. "These buggers are playing us out of a job," he hissed through clenched teeth, before reaching for the soothing elixir of a large dark rum and Diet Coke to temper the sombre grumblings of discontent. As for the grumblings of discontent surrounding golf's controversial merger, the role of high-ranking tour administrators, and the general lack of clarity or cohesion, it'll take more than a few dark rums to ease those, says Nick Roger. Evening Times Sport, July 11. Postecoglou reveals key reasons behind Celtic exit. Report by Liam Bryce. Ange Postecoglou agonised over a soul-searching decision to leave Celtic, but admits his gut told him the time was right to accept a new challenge. The treble-winning Parkhead manager held a first press conference since departing Glasgow for Tottenham Hotspur and opened up on the key factors behind an emotional exit that left supporters crestfallen. Postecoglou agreed to take over from Antonio Conte in North London just days after leading Celtic to a domestic clean sweep in June. And while he did feel there was more to achieve, the 57-year-old insists he needs to keep moving to remain at the top of his game, and that the challenge at Spurs was too strong to resist. "Yeah, absolutely, it required soul-searching to leave," said Postecoglou. "My wife and my kids lived it up there, and my whole family was really happy. I've got 2 young ones and they've lived abroad their whole life in 4 different countries. We made the decision as a family that wherever my profession took us, we'd go and we'd experience that. My wife knows better than anyone. I cannot resist a challenge. That's when I'm at my best, and my history is I've never stayed too long at too many clubs. I've always left when clubs are successful. All I've tried to do whenever I've been, like most managers, is leave the club you've inherited in a better place than where you picked it up, and hopefully make a positive impact. It was a tough decision for sure, but it was also a tough decision to leave the Australian national team before a World Cup. It was tough to leave Yokohama after winning the championship there. You establish relationships with people, and these are always tough decisions. For me, I've always gone with my gut on these things. I know when I'm at my best, and I'm at my best when the challenge is the biggest. I thought this was a challenge that would fit all the things I'm looking to achieve. For me to come from where I've come from and be sitting here today, I needed to have that instinct inside me to know when to move on, because I've had to be faultless in my career to get to this point. That's because no one's going to rate an Australian manager, are they? If I had any significant failures along the way, I was never going to get here. Part of that process is knowing that I need to keep moving to be at my best. Yes, there's challenges at every club you're at. Every club that I've left, even the national team, there were more challenges to take on. But there are always challenges. Even if I stayed at a club for 5 years, I'd never be satisfied with where we're at. I'd be looking to improve all the time. So that's not the key factor for me. The key factor was an opportunity here to again make an impact at a football club, which I've tried to do at every club I've been at. Postecoglou has been succeeded by the returning Brendan Rodgers, a figure he revealed was in constant contact with him during his Celtic tenure. The pair have exchanged good luck messages since, and the Greek Australian is confident the club have chosen the right man to continue his work. Postecoglou knows that cracking Europe is a key aim for Rodgers in his second spell as manager, and firmly believes the foundations are in place for significant progress on the continent. Said Postecoglou, "He's absolutely the right man, mate. He's a fantastic manager, and he loves that football club. He was constantly messaging me while I was Celtic manager to make sure that I stayed on track and we had success. I've exchanged messages with him, and he was very, very supportive when I got the Celtic role. Even when I got this role, he sent me a nice message, and I reciprocated and stayed in contact with him and all the staff there. I've no doubt they'll have great success. Hopefully they can make an impact in the Champions League. I know that's what his ambition is. That group of players and staff certainly have the capability to do that. Hopefully that happens." Report by Liam Bryce. Evening Times Sport, July 11. Rangers announce tour partner with international matches in pipeline. Report by David Irvin. Rangers have announced a new partnership with TEG, a leading international match tour organiser and global entertainment giant. The new partnership will see Rangers participate in TEG's international match tournaments in the summers of 2024 through 2026, where Rangers do not have official FIFA or UEFA tournament duties. Schedules and locations for international tournaments are yet to be confirmed, but North America, the Middle East, and Far East Asia have been earmarked as potential destinations. The collaboration will also see the club work with TEG on several commercial ventures, including live music and entertainment. A statement on the Rangers website reads, "The Rangers first team will compete against the world's leading clubs, allowing the club to directly engage with its famous worldwide support and underpin its long-term international strategy to grow its presence and commercial revenues in new international territories. The schedule and locations will be finalized in the coming months, with North America, the Middle East and Far East Asia, amongst others, earmarked as potential destinations for future Rangers international summer tours." TEG Sport, owned by TEG, enjoys a world-renowned reputation for hosting international tournaments, including organising matches with Real Madrid, Manchester United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Inter Milan, and Bayern Munich in locations such as Australia, Singapore, Thailand, the USA, and the UK. Incoming Rangers Chief Executive James Bisgrove said of the partnership, "We are delighted to team up with TEG and form this innovative commercial partnership that propels our international strategy into a new dimension. The collaboration will enable the Rangers first team to tour international markets such as North America, Far East Asia and the Middle East in the years ahead." Rangers Football Club is incredibly fortunate to have the most passionate and diverse supporter base in world football, and we are excited to bring our men's first team to key international markets with the strong support of TEG as our partner. TEG Group CEO Jeff Jones commented, "We are pleased to have a touring partner with Rangers Football Club. This partnership ends the previous dispute between Rangers and TEG, as both organisations look forward to a collaborative and mutually beneficial commercial relationship in the years ahead. This year alone, our TEG Sport division will tour some of the biggest football clubs across 8 countries in both the Northern and Southern Hemispheres. We look forward to continuing to expand our international football touring with Rangers." Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, July 12. Celtic pre-season friendly in Dublin. Report by Ewan Payton. Celtic will take on Wolverhampton Wanderers in a friendly match this month, and it has been confirmed that Brendan Rodgers' side will face Wolves in a little over 2 weeks. The game will be played at the Aviva Stadium in Dublin on Saturday, July 29, with a 2 p.m. kick-off, as the champions in Scotland go up against the Premier League side. The game has been confirmed via Ticketmaster, with briefs now on sale for fans to purchase. The match will take place 1 week prior to the start of the Premiership season. Celtic will commence the domestic campaign on Flag Day with a home match against Ross County. Rodgers and his squad are currently enjoying some warm weather training in Portugal before setting their sights on a tour of Japan, which was pre-planned when Ange Postecoglou was still at the club. Meanwhile, Celtic goalkeeper Conor Hazard has joined English Championship side Plymouth Argyle on a 3-year deal. The Northern Irishman, who played 7 times competitively for the Hoops, was at the club for 9 years. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, July 12. Former Celtic Jota threatened in shock club ban. Report by Mark Walker. Jota has been threatened with a shock ban from playing for his new club after Saudi Arabian football authorities demanded Al Ittihad pay their debts. The former Celtic star sealed a sensational £25 million deal to the Middle East last week after 2 hugely successful years with the Hoops. His club have also brought in French superstar Karim Benzema and former Chelsea midfielder N'Golo Kante as their marquee signings for the new season. But they have been stunned by a demand by the Saudi FA to pay their debts immediately, according to Saudi Arabian newspaper Okaz, or face a ban from fielding their new signings. Al Ittihad club reportedly owe £20 million in debts and have been handed a deadline at the start of the King Salman Club Cup competition, an Arab version of the Champions League, on July 27 to prove they are debt-free. If they fail to do that, they will be hit with a registration ban that would prevent them from including any new signings for the forthcoming competition and the Saudi Professional League. Portuguese ace Jota is due to make his bow for the club in their first game in the group stages later this month, with the league campaign due to start later this year. But that's now shrouded in doubt unless Al Ittihad get their finances in order. Report by Mark Walker. Evening Times Sport, July 12. URC fixtures. Glasgow Warriors and Edinburgh double-header confirmed. Report by David Barnes. Scottish rugby fans can once again look forward to a festive double-header between the nation's 2 professional teams, with Glasgow Warriors hosting Edinburgh at Scotstoun on Friday 22nd December and the return leg set for Murrayfield on Saturday 30th December. The full United Rugby Championship fixture schedule has been announced 102 days ahead of the start of the campaign, which is kicking off later than usual this year to minimise clashes with the World Cup. Edinburgh start their campaign with a visit to the Dragons on Saturday 21st October, kick-off 3:05 p.m, while Glasgow Warriors face a baptism of fire when they host Leinster, the league's most successful team, a day later, Sunday 22nd October at 4 p.m. 6 of Glasgow's 18 regular season fixtures, 5 out of 9 home games, have been scheduled for the fans' preferred Friday night slot, while Edinburgh have 7 Friday night games, 5 at home. With no November Test Series break, URC teams will take on a schedule of 11 consecutive weekends of rugby, including Champions and Challenge Cup matches, so January will also provide 2 relief weekends for teams to take a break in play. Doug Struth, Edinburgh's managing director, said, combined with 2 home Friday night pre-season games, and with the EPCR Challenge Cup fixtures to follow, the anticipation is already building for another massively exciting campaign in the Scottish capital. We listened to supporters' feedback over the last 2 years, and it's clear that Friday nights work for a large portion of our fan base, while the Saturday afternoon slot was a clear favourite for the 1872 Cup decider. So we are grateful to fans for their feedback and to the tournament organisers for helping us build a well-balanced fixture card for the forthcoming season. Meanwhile, URC Chief Executive Martin Anayi added, the fixture list is the central pillar to the operation of our league and teams, and providing certainty to fans, clubs and broadcasters earlier than ever will have a positive impact. Each year we feel we are learning more and more about how to refine and improve our process, and the final fixture list itself. And I must express great gratitude to our broadcast partners who have supported so many requests from the League and our clubs. Report by David Barnes. Evening Times Sport, July 12. Kyogo lifts lid on new Celtic deal. Report by Ewan Payton. Kyogo has opened up on his new contract at Celtic, and the Japanese star is excited to get down to work under new manager Brendan Rodgers this summer. The Irishman replaced Ange Postecoglou last month as he sealed his sensational return to the club. He was dealt a huge blow as Jota left the club last week as the Portuguese winger headed for Saudi Arabia. Since then, though, Rodgers has been laying down a marker by signing up 3 of the club's best players on long-term contracts. Kyogo, Daizen Maeda and Callum McGregor have all signed bumper deals to further underline their commitment to the Parkhead club. And Kyogo is delighted to have extended his stay with the Scottish champions, as he now looks forward to working under Rodgers and learning from his experiences as a coach in the Premier League. Asked about working under a new boss, Kyogo told Celtic TV, "He's a brilliant manager. I'm happy to be working with him, and I would like to return the favour by playing well with success. I'm really delighted, to be honest. I'm happy that the new contract shows how much they value and need me, for the team and for the people who support, and eventually for myself. I will continue to improve and deliver the success." After the club's training camp in Portugal this week, the Hoops will head to Asia for a tour of Japan, and Kyogo is thrilled to get the opportunity to return home with Celtic. He said, "I'm really excited about it and excited to play in front of Japanese fans. Many players from Celtic are going, so I want the Japanese fans to know about us and become our fans. Also, many people from Scotland are coming down and I want them to enjoy Japanese culture. There will be 2 tough games, but if we can deliver what we are working and believing in, then they will be good games, and the good results will follow, and we will play with high confidence in ourselves." Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, July 12. Lee Gibson urges Scotland to channel World Cup frustrations. Report by Alison McConnell. On a day when it was revealed that the Scottish Women's Premier League attracted a record-breaking attendance figure of over 100,000 supporters last term, it may feel pertinent to pause for thought. With domestic attendance figures broken on 3 occasions last season in the Scottish Women's Premier League, the indicators would point to Scotland finally enjoying some of the growth that has been notable elsewhere across the last decade. It is an encouraging figure, but makes the failure to make this summer's FIFA Women's World Cup all the more galling. The last time Scotland set off for the 2019 tournament, they did so on the back of a crowd of more than 18,500 supporters. Their numbers quickly dissipated as Scotland failed to build on their trip to France. As teams prepare for the kick-off to the most commercially lucrative women's tournament to date, Scotland are preparing for friendlies against Northern Ireland and Finland. If there is a sense of preparing for a village picnic while the mother of all parties gears up elsewhere, goalkeeper Lee Gibson has inevitably urged Pedro Martinez Loza's side to channel their frustrations. She admitted, "It was October when we played Ireland, but it still feels like yesterday." We have come a long way, though, ever since then, and I think there has been a freshness about the squad in recent camps. It feels like this is an exciting time for the team. That first game, away to England, is a game that everyone will want to be involved in. We would all have loved to be at the World Cup. There isn't any one of us who would deny that, and it comes down to the fact that we just never turned up that night against the Republic of Ireland. It will be difficult to watch, but I will tune in because I think it will be the biggest and glitziest women's tournament that we have seen to date. I just hope that some of the energy it generates around women's football comes to Scotland. We have seen a real upsurge in attendances this season, and it is so important that we keep the ball rolling with that. There would be little question that however low-key these games are, that they have been treated as anything but by Gibson. The goalkeeper enjoyed a belated Maldives honeymoon as she celebrated last year's marriage to David, Scotland's head kitman. But it was not all about kicking back and taking it easy. She smiled. There was a football pitch and a gym in our hotel, so I wasn't slacking. It was 30 to 31 degrees every day, and the humidity was a killer, but I was still out there making sure I got the running in. We have had probably the longest time that we have ever had. We took the first 2 weeks off, and then pretty much the last 3 or 4 weeks has been running and getting back into it. There is nothing worse than coming back into pre-season and feeling that you aren't ready for it. It is one of the myths that goalkeepers don't do the same work. We still do all the running, which I don't think any goalkeeper ever enjoys. It is just making sure that you are ready. At club level, we all had a plan so that we were all going back in a good place. Scotland had strong displays and wins against Australia and Costa Rica in their last outings, teams who are both represented at this month's World Cup. With an eye now on the Nations League campaign, which kicks off against England in September, Gibson is confident that this weekend's double header will be focused on the work that needs done ahead of the autumn campaign. And she continued, "It is a chance to build into the Nations League, which is going to be hugely important for us. We have big teams, we are in Pot A, and it is a chance to go and challenge ourselves against some really top teams. And I think, as a team, we tend to do better against the bigger teams. We have that September game against the old enemy, and I don't think you need any more motivation than that. It is the 150th anniversary year, and I think it is incredibly exciting to look forward to that. The Nations League is the next step for us, and these games are about ensuring we are in the right place to hit the ground running with those games." Report by Alison McConnell. Evening Times Sport, July 12. Neil Lennon on Frimpong Pride. Report by Aidan Smith. Neil Lennon insists he is bursting with pride that protégé Jeremy Frimpong is set for another major move this summer that will massively benefit Celtic. Lennon snapped up the marauding fullback from Manchester City's academy for around £300,000 in 2019 after spotting his talent in a closed-door game at Lennoxtown, and 18 months later he was sold to Bayer Leverkusen for an eye-watering £11 million. That was sensational business for the Hoops, but they're set to cash in again, with Leverkusen reputedly slapping a £35 million price tag on the young Dutchman's head as Arsenal and Manchester United vie for his services. Celtic have a sell-on clause agreed with the Bundesliga side, which has been touted as high as 30%. So after selling Jota for £25 million, they could be in for another massive windfall of over £10 million. Said Lennon, "He was brilliant for me. I saw him playing for Man City's 21s at Lennoxtown, and I really liked the look of him. It was great to see him in the flesh, and it's so much better than looking at Y-Scout and watching videos. He came in and he just blew us all away with his pace and his quality and his enthusiasm. He's got a very infectious personality. He's a lovely boy, but he could be quite naughty at times too. He took the plunge to go to Germany, and he has excelled, and I'm really proud of him. He is deceptive. He's small but so powerful, good on the ball, and quite different from a lot of full-backs out there. I follow his career, and I hope he gets the move that he wants now. It will mean more money for Celtic, and that's the model. Find a young player who can enhance the team, and then sell him on for a profit. We got a bit lucky with him and got him for about £300,000 because he was a wee bit under the radar, but it worked out very well for Celtic. We had a few of these with Fraser Forster, Victor Wanyama and Virgil van Dijk, and I always follow guys like that, but not just the Celtic lads. Hibs boys too, like John McGinn and Ryan Porteous, who have obviously gone on to do very well. Report by Aidan Smith. Evening Times Sport, July 12. Martin Hannon says, Ruth Davidson's Scottish Rugby Union appointment will only stir division. More years ago than I care to remember, a relative of mine said my then job as a rugby correspondent must be a breeze because the season only lasted from September to April. What would you write about in the summer, he asked. And to be honest, I had to mumble something about golf or cricket. These days it is still a challenge to write about rugby out of season, but then along comes a week like we've just had, and the problem of suitable subjects just disappears. I am not going to write too much about the appointment of Ruth Davidson as a non-executive director of the Scottish Rugby Union's operational board. Suffice to say, I checked the calendar and funnily enough, it was not April 1, for with the possible exemption of Boris Johnson and the ghost of Maggie Thatcher, I cannot think of a more divisive figure to be one of the SRU's figureheads. I note the online petition calling for her removal has reached 10,000 signatures, but I also note that many promises by supporters to cancel season tickets or not spend their hard-earned cash on Scotland replica kit, the World Cup version of which was launched while the furore over Davison's appointment was raging on. Genius marketing. I say to those fans that their money is needed to pay wages, and don't punish players, coaches and backroom staff for a piece of incomprehensible Blazerati recruitment, and were all HR procedures followed. Having met her, I am well aware that Ruth Davidson is quite a personable individual, and that she did take a stand against Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister. But the fact is she's a Tory, a divisive one at that, and sits in the Lords as Baroness Davidson of London Links, though that should be London London Links, because try as I might, all I can think of that she will bring to the SRU is her much-vaunted connections at Westminster. Mark Suter's appointment as non-executive director was announced at the same time, and at least he has a proven track record in the media industry. I quote the words of board chairman John McGuigan. I am delighted Ruth and Mike have agreed to join the SRL board. They bring significant experience gained over many years in areas that will be critical as we continue to evolve the game in Scotland. I await, with highly unbated breath, the product of Ruth Davidson's efforts for the SRU. And yes, I'll be checking. We know what Stuart Hogg did for Scottish rugby, and I have to say his announcement of immediate retirement, though not a surprise, still came as a shock, while the thought of going into the World Cup without him at full back is truly saddening. Yet I totally understand his reasons, not least because he is the father of young children, as I was when I had to quit playing at the same age of 31. The surgeon handed me a test tube containing white bits floating in a solution and said, "That's what is left of your right knee's cartilage." I was a battered old prop, playing second 15 rugby in the lower divisions, and the doc's word of "no more rugby for you" devastated me. How much worse it must be for a truly world-class player to have to listen to what his body is telling him and walk away from the sport that he has so greatly enhanced. I am aware that along with many rugby players and footballers, as they reach their 30s, Stuart Hogg is finding it more and more difficult to recover from the sheer physical effects that the modern high-pressure game is having on his body. I remember interviewing one footballer who retired from playing and went into coaching at 31. "I just knew my legs were gone," he said. I have never heard a better explanation for a premature retirement. There have already been several articles suggesting a replacement, and Blair Kinghorn of Edinburgh Rugby is in pole position, having understudied Hogg. He and Hogg have one big asset in common: sheer pace, as Kinghorn showed with that classic try against Italy in the Six Nations. I suspect Ollie Smith will one day wear the number 15 jersey regularly, but he is still only 22 and has 3 caps, while Kinghorn is 26 and quite astonishingly has quietly amassed 43 caps. He could conceivably reach the 50 in France this autumn. No offence to either player, but they are not in the class of Hogg yet, and he will be a big miss in France. Yet for his honesty in quitting now, after his frankly magnificent contribution to the cause of Scotland's rugby team, Hogg has done Gregor Townsend and the squad a favour, for it would have been agonising to watch him continue when he was clearly failing to match his own supreme standards. We can only hope that we will see his like again, says Martin Hannon. Evening Times Sport, July 12. Rangers confirm Liam King injury blow. Report by Aidan Smith. Rangers defender Liam King could miss the start of next season after suffering an ankle injury in training. The club have announced the 19-year-old will be sidelined for a significant period of time after sustaining a blow during a pre-season camp in Germany. Rangers begin their Premiership campaign away at Kilmarnock on August 5. A club statement read, "Rangers can confirm defender Liam King suffered a contact injury to his ankle at the club's pre-season training camp in Germany on Monday, which will rule him out for a significant period of time. Liam is being looked after by the club's medical staff, and a further update will follow in due course," Everyone at the club wishes him a speedy recovery. Meanwhile, Cyril Dessers knows that there is a void to fill at Rangers following Alfredo Morelos' departure, but he is determined to be his own man at Ibrox. The 28-year-old Nigeria striker became Michael Beale's sixth signing of the summer transfer window when he joined from Cremonese on a 4-year deal for a reported fee of around £4.5 million. Dessers will be expected to take over from Colombia striker Morelos, who became a fan's favourite during his 6 years in Govan, where he scored 124 goals before his contract ran out at the end of the season. Speaking at a media conference from Rangers training base in Germany, Dessers said, "Of course, Alfredo did amazing things for Rangers at Ibrox, so it is never easy to come after a good striker like he was. But on the other side, I cannot look at the past. I am here for the present and for the future, and I hope to do some nice things, some good things for Rangers as well, and I hope I can build a similar relationship with the fans. But that will depend on our relationship and the things I do on the pitch and off the pitch. So I am confident that can work." Dessers joins Abdallah Sima, Sam Lammers, Jack Butland, Dujon Sterling and Kieran Dowell as Beale's new boys for the upcoming season, with the promise of more signings to come in the rebuild, as Rangers look to take the cinched Premiership title, as well as both domestic cups, back from Old Firm rivals Celtic, following their domestic treble last season. The former Utrecht, Heracles Almelo and Genk player looks forward to a new wind at Ibrox, and he continued, "Rangers, of course, is a massive club. The history, the stadium, the fans, even the city, everything is amazing. But apart from that, of course I spoke with the manager as well, and he spoke about what is going on now. After not such an easy season, there is a new wind at the club, and I want to be a part of that. I am at a good age right now. 28 is the perfect age where physically at your top level, and you have gained some experience from the last years. So I think that is a perfect time to play for trophies and hopefully win some trophies. And of course the mentality of Rangers, which is present at this moment in the team, already is clear. And it is clear that I want to be a part of that. I think I can bring some things, not only football-wise but mentality-wise, in the locker room. And I hope I can play a role as well in that." Report by Aidan Smith. Evening Times Sport, July 13. Kilmarnock Football Club away strip honours Sir Alexander Fleming. Report by Caroline Wilson. Football is the most popular sport in the world, meaning the shirts players wear are lucrative advertising tools. However, the oldest club in Scotland's Premier League has switched things up to promote a piece of history on the pitch that it hopes will encourage younger fans to take pride in their hometown as well as the team. Kilmarnock Football Club's 23-24 away kit pays homage to the Scot who is credited with one of the 20th century's most significant medical breakthroughs. Sir Alexander Fleming is one of 2 Nobel Prize winners who were educated at Kilmarnock Academy. The design of the club's away jersey incorporates the visual DNA of penicillin, which was discovered by Darvel-born Fleming in 1928. Fused onto the new crimson-red kit, a cyber blue pattern illuminates the molecular formula of the world's first antibiotic. The club said the £55 shirt had been designed with the aim of inspiring youngsters across the region to embrace innovation by serving as a reminder that their contribution can have a lasting impact on society. Over the coming months, the design will be used as a tool to educate pupils about the discovery that revolutionized medicine, with the Killie community team preparing to share Fleming's story as part of its school education programme. Kilmarnock Football Club has also committed to donating a percentage of all jersey sales to a local charity partner, the Crosshouse Children's Fund, which supports the treatment of babies, children and young adults across Ayrshire. A club spokesman said, "Kilmarnock is a town with an illustrious history of nurturing world-renowned talent. As a club, we are proud to have the platform to showcase our community's incredible contribution to modern society. The story behind this season's away kit will allow us to continue inspiring the next generation as part of our ongoing engagement with school pupils, in addition to evolving the relationship with valued charity partners. Ultimately, it will support our strive to ensure youngsters across the region are proud of their community and local football club." Fleming's discoveries led to the antibiotic that became known as penicillin while he was working at St Mary's Hospital in London in 1928. The story goes that he went on holiday and left the lid of his bacteriological plate, and when he returned, fungus had landed on the plate and had killed all the bacteria in its proximity. However, he was not able to purify it for use, and the coming of the Second World War saw interest in Fleming's work rekindled by a group of Oxford scientists, including Howard Florey, an Australian pathologist. On the day that the evacuation of the beach in Dunkirk began, the scientists conducted the first mouse experiments and found that the drug was able to cure them of bacterial infections. The drug has saved the lives of hundreds of millions of people since it was first used in 1941. Kilmarnock Academy was attended by another medical pioneer, Sir John Boyd Orr. The Scots scientist was the first in his field to establish a definite link between poverty, poor diet, and ill health and underachievement at school. His pioneering research led to millions of children across the UK being given free school milk from 1946 to 1971, when Margaret Thatcher, then Education Secretary, cut provision, a decision she is said to have later regretted. Report by Caroline Wilson. Evening Times Sport, July 13th. Why David De Gea leaves behind a muddled Manchester United legacy. Report by Liam Bryce. A rarity for any goalkeeper, but there was once a time when David De Gea alone was worth the entrance fee at Old Trafford. That Manchester United's best player in the post-Sir Alex Ferguson era was one who stopped goals instead of scoring them is a whole other conversation. But that is not to detract from the fact that, for a number of years, were it not for the Spaniard between the posts, this past decade would have been even more miserable. Jaw-dropping reflexes, improvisational ingenuity, and a highlight reel of incredible stops to rival any keeper of the modern era. There was a reason Ferguson skipped a League Cup tie against Scunthorpe United to watch him in 2010, one of only 3 United matches in his 26-year tenure for which he was not present. After a shaky beginning to his Premier League career, pundit and ex-Liverpool midfielder Jamie Redknapp once remarked that De Gea looked like he needed to grow into his clothes. De Gea blossomed into arguably the world's best goalkeeper for a time. He was named United's Player of the Year on a joint record 4 occasions, and was so often the sole shining example of excellence in the series of thoroughly average teams which followed Ferguson's retirement. His 2017 masterclass away at Arsenal, in which he made 14 saves, was among the most breathtaking goalkeeping displays you'll ever see. But for all that, his legacy remains a muddled one. The last few seasons in particular have not been kind to him, and it eventually culminated in a clumsily handled departure, even if the decision to part ways is unquestionably the right one. Mistakes, often glaring ones, became increasingly common, but most strikingly of all is that the 32-year-old found himself left behind by the demands modern football places on elite goalkeepers. De Gea is among the last school of top keepers whose role was defined almost entirely by the saves they made. His trademark was an uncanny ability to make them with his feet, so there's a cruel irony about the fact that it's where they so often failed him that has led Erik ten Hag to cutting ties with United's last link to the Ferguson years. Ten Hag wants his keeper to be an effective contributor to the team's build-up, but it is simply not in De Gea's skill set. Fears that this would be the case were brutally realised last season in the infamous 4-0 horror show away at Brentford, throughout which De Gea looked painfully uncomfortable with what he was being asked to do. Afterwards, Ten Hag was adamant he would adjust to the role, but United's very next game suggested the manager was not so convinced of his own words. Against Liverpool the following week, De Gea was under obvious instruction to be risk-averse, as United went long, playing over their opponent's press, not through it. To be fair, it worked, and Ten Hag earned a much-needed result. But there was more than a hint of necessity about the change, one which raised questions over De Gea's long-term future. He did not, as Ten Hag insisted he would, show much sign of being able to change his game, and United's view was that any new contract for De Gea, now into the last year of a £375,000 a week deal, would only be offered on reduced terms. It's been reported that as Ten Hag became increasingly convinced a new keeper was required, that those terms were reduced even further. It is understandable then that such an influential long-term servant to the club would find his nose knocked out of joint by such a humbling course of events. This clearly led to an impasse, which ensured De Gea's United career petered out in its final weeks under a cloud of uncertainty. There was to be no Old Trafford send-off in the final home game of the season, and it transpired that De Gea's final meaningful act in a red shirt was to allow Ilkay Gundogan's FA Cup final winner trundle past him into the bottom corner. That followed costly mistakes against Seville and West Ham that surely hardened Ten Hag's stance. Sentimentality can be in short supply at the top of the game, and despite his obvious decline, it's hard not to feel De Gea did deserve a better goodbye. But it does not change the reality that it was time to move on, something that had been a little lost in the criticism the club has faced for their handling of his departure. And it should not be forgotten that the player himself was not shy in playing cat and mouse with the club down the years. Twice before, De Gea has allowed his contract to creep into final stages to get what he wanted from United, and but for an infamously dodgy fax machine, he would have left for Real Madrid in 2015. In 2019, he held out for a massively improved contract, a decision questioned by fans at the time, which made it difficult for Ten Hag to seek a replacement last summer, given no other club was likely to pay him what United already were. So in the end, yes, it was messy, but that there are few decrying the call not to retain De Gea is telling. Ultimately, this is the best outcome for United, even if how it has been reached appears a tad cold towards a player with a claim for being considered a club legend. The case finally closed will allow Ten Hag to step up his pursuit of Inter's Andre Onana, a keeper he worked with at Ajax, and a much better fit for how he wants United to play. There's perhaps a case for the club to reflect on how this saga was allowed to play out. Departures rarely seem to run smoothly at United. For a player who has contributed much in more than a decade in Manchester, for that he should always be welcome back at Old Trafford. His place in club history is secure in being the last link to the days of Ferguson. Now, though, it's time to let Ten Hag secure the future, says Liam Bryce. Evening Times Sport, July 13. Lustig on Postecoglou and Rodgers at Celtic. Report by David Irvin. Michael Lustig insists he could not have picked a better manager to replace Ange Postecoglou at Celtic than Brendan Rodgers. The Parkhead hero reckons Rodgers can once again achieve huge success in the dugout in Glasgow. After all, former Sweden international Lustig cites Rodgers as the best manager he ever worked under in his playing career. However, that's not to say Rodgers is an automatic upgrade to treble-winning Celtic manager Postecoglou, who has moved to Tottenham. For Lustig, it is a tricky comparison, as he discussed the amazing progress under Postecoglou at Celtic. Speaking to the Daily Record, Lustig explained, "When Ange came in, no one really knew who he was, and he was taking over a team that we thought might be going to struggle for a couple of years. We didn't know some of the players he was bringing in either. To do what Ange has been doing for those 2 years has been amazing. So it's really difficult for me to say if Brendan is going to be an upgrade or not. But what I do know is that I could not have picked a better manager for the job than Brendan Rodgers. He is absolutely the best manager that I have ever worked under." Lustig went on to reveal the main factor in Rodgers' coaching, which led to success at Celtic, instilling a proper belief in the squad. And he added, "There were so many times when he would tell us how to play against a certain team, and every time he was proven right. Every time. So for me, when he speaks about an upcoming game, you just sit there and think, okay, we're going to have a really good chance to win the game. This guy knows what he's doing." That's the main thing he gives to the players, a proper belief in everything they do. Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, July 13. Malik Tillman transfer latest. Report by Mark Walker. Eintracht Frankfurt could be set to inflict another painful blow to Rangers by snapping up Malik Tillman from Bayern Munich. And they are hopeful Tillman's good relationship with new boss Dino Topmoller and his coaching staff will help swing the deal. Tillman spent the season at Rangers and was hugely impressive until a hamstring injury picked up in the Scottish Cup semi-final defeat to Celtic ended his season and his loan spell. Since then, there have been conflicting reports about his future and the intricacies of the agreement between Bayern Munich and Rangers. Rangers triggered the option to sign him permanently for £5 million, but the Bundesliga champions cancelled that, which entitled the Ibrox club to significant compensation, which reportedly included a £1 million fee and future add-ons. However, Eintracht, who beat Rangers in the 2022 Europa League final in Seville on penalties, have been credited with a strong interest in the USA international, who could now be set to stay in the Bundesliga. Eintracht hired Topmoller last month, who spent 2 years at Bayern Munich with Tillman, and he's just appointed Stefan Buck as his assistant manager. Buck was in charge of Bayern's youth coaches setup and was reserve assistant manager too, where he worked with Tillman. And reports in Germany have suggested Eintracht would have to pay around £6 million with add-ons to land the 21-year-old former Ibrox star. Tillman's older brother Timothy appeared to offer Rangers some hope earlier this month when he stated, "I don't know what the future holds for Malik, but I will say he really likes it in Glasgow and with Rangers." Report by Mark Walker. Evening Times Sport, July 13. Celtic and Rangers lead Scottish Premiership World Cup windfalls. Report by David Irvin. FIFA has revealed the World Cup windfall payments to UEFA clubs, with 7 Scottish sides earning financial boosts. Celtic, Rangers, Hearts, Dundee United, Hibs, St Johnstone and St Mirren all receive fees for their players being involved in the tournament. Clubs were paid around £8,000 per day a player was involved in the tournament, regardless of how many minutes they played. The fee is divided and distributed to the player's current club and any other side with which the player was registered in the 2 years leading to the finals. A total of $2,161,798 or £1,656,856 was paid out to Scottish clubs, representing 1.3% of the entire fees paid to UEFA clubs by FIFA. Celtic, represented by Dejan Maeda, Aaron Mouy, Josip Juranovic and Cameron Carter-Vickers, pocketed the most cash through the FIFA scheme, with $664,326 received. The figure also includes payments for Olivier Ntcham and Jeremy Frimpong, who featured at the tournament within the 2-year registration period. Rangers were next on the list, receiving $414,291 for player involvement, as Barisic reached the Final Four with Croatia alongside Juranovic. Hearts were next in Scotland's earnings list, taking $325,775 for Nathaniel Atkinson, Cammy Devlin and Kyle Rolls, who all featured for Australia. Dundee United got $242,734 and had Dylan Levitt and Aziz Behich for Wales and Australia respectively at the tournament. Injured Martin Boyle attended the tournament for Australia despite his long-term injury layoff, as Hibs pocketed $229,959. St Johnstone received $208,058 for David Witherspoon's involvement with Canada, while St Mirren banked $76,653 as Keanu Bacchus played for Australia. Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, July 13. Rangers get injury boost. Report by Ewan Payton. Connor Goldson and Tom Lawrence are nearing a return to full Rangers training. Michael Beale has revealed the positive news about the pair while away in Germany on pre-season. In a wide-ranging interview with Rangers TV, the boss shed some light on the injury front at the club, with several on the treatment table at the moment. Goldson, Lawrence, and then the likes of Stephen Davis and Dujon Sterling have been left home in Glasgow, but Beale insists it won't be long before Goldson and Lawrence return to action, with Kemar Roofe also making great strides in his recovery. He said, "Just on the injury front, we've some excellent news that Connor Goldson is progressing very well, and Tom Lawrence will join the team the moment we return home. Kemar Roofe has joined in the last 2 sessions, so it is really pleasing that we're making great strides. I think having Mark Waller back working with John Irwin and his team is a real benefit for everyone." Sterling was the club's first signing of the summer, but he was excluded from this week's trip to Germany. Beale has given supporters an idea of when the former Chelsea defender will be back in training ahead of the remainder of the pre-season, when he added, "He's got a slight calf strain. Dujon worked extremely well over the summer. He came back powerful and strong. He looked like one of the fittest in the group. Unfortunately, he's picked up a small problem. It's a 10 to 12 day problem. It was easier for us to keep him at home because we've got a group of players at home in Tom Lawrence, Stephen Davis and Connor Goldson working there, as well as 1 or 2 of the international players reporting back at the end of the week. It made sense for them to go to Glasgow rather than come here to work, so we do have a working staff at home." On Leon King, Beale commented, "It's a desperately frustrating one and a sad one for Leon. It's a significant injury. We don't want to put a timescale on it yet, because we've immediately scanned it in the last 24 hours, and with these scans, you probably need to give it another 24 hours before you see the true extent. We did that locally to see if there were any breaks. There's no official update other than it's definitely a significant injury, which is more months than weeks." Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, July 14. Rory McIlroy eyeing Scottish Open glory. Report by Martin Macmillan. Rory McIlroy set his sights on heading to Hoylake on the back of victory in the Genesis Scottish Open after enjoying a superb start to the £7 million event. McIlroy recorded an eagle and 6 birdies in an opening 6 under par 64 at the Renaissance Club that left him 3 shots off the lead held by South Korea's Ben An, whose flawless 61 equalled the course record. Said McIlroy, "It's a really good start. I've not had particularly great results around this course the last couple of times, but I feel like my game is definitely in better shape now. I feel I'm coming in here playing really good golf, producing good results, and getting myself in contention, and I'm just really trying to do the same things and adapt to the different conditions we're going to face over the next couple of weeks." Next week is, of course, the 151st Open Championship at Royal Liverpool, where McIlroy won the 3rd of his 4 major titles 9 years ago. And the 34-year-old added, "My mind is pretty much on this week. I've got myself off to a great start, and I would love to win the Scottish Open. That's a massive deal in its own right, and what that could give me going into the summer. Look, we've got the Open Championship next week, but thinking ahead to FedEx Cup and race to Dubai and all that, it's an important week. I'm focused on this week, but it's great that by playing this week I should be getting a little bit more prepared for links golf again next week as well. I didn't touch my clubs for 10 days after the Travellers, but I've got some really good feelings in my swing that I think are quite consistent, and even if I do take a bit of time away, I feel really comfortable getting back into it. It was a nice reset, but after today it feels like I came back where I left off." Anne, who was the youngest ever winner of the United States Amateur as a 17-year-old in 2009, carded 9 birdies to enjoy a 2-shot lead over American Davis Riley, with Thomas Detry alongside McIlroy on 6 under. "I feel like I'm back home," said Anne, who won the 2015 BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth by 6 shots, but now plays primarily on the PGA Tour. "This is the tour I started my professional career. It's been great coming back and playing links golf. I couldn't play any better today. I drove it well and hit it well and chipped it well and putted well. That's a clean scorecard." Detry came agonisingly close to winning one of the sponsors' cars for himself and his caddy, with a hole-in-one on the 17th, but was delighted to be back at one of his favourite venues. He said, "It was inches away, so I'm looking forward to seeing the highlight of that shot. It's my playground here. I always play well. I have a lovely little cottage out here on the golf course. I'm staying here with my family, and everybody is happy. I feel good." Scotland's Ewan Ferguson led the home challenge, following a 4 under par 66, with world number 1 Scotty Scheffler 2 strokes further back. Defending champion Xander Schauffele had a birdie at 2 of his last 4 holes to return a level par 70. Evening Times Sport, July 14. The fixture. Sam Kerr details life-changing Rangers to Bayern transfer. Report by James Morgan. Sam Kerr made an illuminating point as she revealed the finer details behind her transfer to Bayern Munich earlier this summer. Speaking to the BBC this week, the 24-year-old said she procrastinated over the decision to sign for the German side because there was interest from a few other clubs, before finally catching herself on and agreeing to the move from Rangers, where she had played for 2 seasons. Kerr said her transfer really began to hit home when Patricia Martinez-Lucy's Scotland squad for the friendly international double-header against Northern Ireland and Finland last month was announced, and she saw S. Kerr, FC Bayern, written down for the first time. It was Kerr's initial belief that it was star Australian striker Sam Kerr of Chelsea that Bayern wanted to sign, an indication that, even for female Scottish footballers making a name for themselves on the European and international stage, there remains a lack of self-belief among their number. But are we really surprised? The women's game in general has been suppressed. It remains the butt of jokes, as something that some men don't take seriously. Consider the reaction to a United States women's team's 12-0 defeat by League Two side Wrexham last month in a friendly in North Carolina, billed on social media as the USWNT. A slew of posts were awash with laughing emojis and vitriol as this result was held up as some kind of evidence that the female game remains a joke, rather than something that is still influenced by speed and physicality. Furthermore, if anyone had cared to investigate, they would soon have realized that the USWNT was nothing of the sort, and was made up of a bulk of players who have long since retired, such as Laurie Lindsay, who hung up her boots in 2014. Wrexham, meanwhile, contained 20-year-olds who played in the conference last season. But that's really a debate for another newsletter. In this instance, we're talking about good news stuff, such as Kerr's move to Germany and the slow but perceptible rise of Scottish women's football. Kerr on BBC podcast Behind the Goals said, "I've not really processed it. I saw FC Bayern on the SWNT squad list, and it was just like, what? I'm just Sam from Scotland who plays for Rangers. That's how I see myself. It's crazy. In Scotland camps, if Rachel Corsie or Caroline Weir says, 'Well done, Sam,' that is better than achievements and awards for me." Kerr's mentioning of those two Scotland players is instructive. If you haven't already done so, then take a closer look at Loza's recent squad list and the names of the teams they play for. Scottish players are in high demand. As well as Kerr's name, you can add that of Real Madrid's Weir, Chelsea's Erin Cuthbert, and Manchester United's Martha Thomas and Kirsty Hansen, players who are performing for some of the bigger teams in the women's game. Corsie of Aston Villa has pulled out. Never mind, we'll replace her with Celtic captain Kelly Clark. If only the men's team had such equivalent riches in defence. Meanwhile, this summer, another Scottish player has been on the move to better things. Kerr's former Glasgow City teammate, Jenna Clark, has left the SWPL champions to join Liverpool, and the increasing interest in and demand for players from this country can only be a good thing for the development of the women's game at international level. Make no mistake, Scottish women's football is on the rise. It's hardly worthy of a breaking news ticker, since we already know this, but there is a wider point. Kerr wants Scotland to prove it, starting with the Nations League encounters against European champions England, world number 9 team Netherlands, and Belgium, who sit 4 places above the Scots in 19th place. And she says, "We're at the stage now where we're not just there to compete, we need to win games. The Nations League coming up is going to be really competitive." Report by James Morgan.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q&Review and to tell your friends about our service.